This particular episode is for the everydayers.
You are Locked On Huskers, your daily podcast on the Nebraska Cornhuskers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey gang, DP here, Lincoln America. Thank you for making Locked On Huskers your first watch and listen each and every single day. And as I teased in the open, here's the thing. This episode is purely for the everydayers, those folks who tune in and make this the first watch and listen each and every single day. Shout out to you. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for sharing. This content is available, and you guys make sure it's out there for everybody who cares about the Huskers. Locked On Huskers brought to you by the folks from FanDuel Sportsbook. This is the official sportsbook of the National Basketball Association. All sorts of perks, all sorts of details. The app is easy to use. It's safe. It's secure. All you got to do, download the app or jump on FanDuel.com/lockedon. Get you all the perks and opportunities there. I wanted to talk about the transfer portal. We are a week and 2 days from spring game. April 22nd, Lincoln, Nebraska, we get to see the first version in full of Matt Rhule's Nebraska Cornhusker football team. And the lead story is in trying to find out and pay attention to and lock down who exactly are we going to be paying attention to and why. A lot of the story in spring practice has been about the players who we see out at practice when we're able to look in. Now, some players are fighting injuries, battling injuries and recovering. Some are in the recovery phase, which means they're limited in the amount of work that they're allowed to put in and the exposure to additional injury or delaying or halting that recovery. And then there are players who are in full and they're being given every opportunity, every rep in full that they could possibly get in order to show that not only do they belong at the University of Nebraska and they belong on this football team and as a member of this program and as a scholarship player in this program, but to also show to this new coaching staff. And with the exception of Coach Raiola, they're all new coaches. So you have these players who have a very small and finite window to grab the attention of those coaches and show, listen, that I'm in shape, I'm in condition, I'm strong enough, I'm fast enough, I can pick up new teachings and new coaching. I can share, I can take that new install and put it and show execution of it. I have a pretty good understanding of football in general and what's required, and to show that they can move in the space that's required for them to be a member of the 85-person scholarship squad, along with the walk-ons at the University of Nebraska. Now, that number at 85 is the number that has to be reached before the season starts. That number currently stands above that. And of all the rooms that exist, I would imagine that within each of those rooms, there is a slight bit of discomfort for certain players, because if double-digit rooms exist and double-digit scholarships have to be removed, some would think that in some of these rooms, a player who currently exists and who's getting reps at spring practice or who is talked about as a returning member of the roster won't be here come September 1st or August 1st, for that matter. Now, what we understand in conversation is that in past business, players would come in and compete for a spot, and that was kind of the focus. But anytime a new coach comes in, and in this case, Matt Rhule comes in, he's got a new staff, they've got a new scheme, new way of thinking, new verbiage, new processes. The players who were returning don't necessarily have an advantage. They have tape, they have resume that the new coaches can look at and see, okay, does this fit? Does this fit what we want to do? It fit what they did a year ago. but does it fit what we're going to want to do? So depending on the group, there are different responsibility and skill sets that are in play. And it's a little different because the new coach is brought in not to work as things were. The new coach and the new staff is brought in to change the standard of play at the University of Nebraska. So what was being done a year ago wasn't good enough. So players that were talented enough to start a year ago aren't necessarily guaranteed that position in return this year. And that's where some of the discomfort is, because a lot of those players are dealing with bumps and bruises from a year ago. So they're not getting the opportunity to show in front of this new coaching staff, in front of their new group coach, in front of their new teammates, that they not only belong, but that they deserve that sort of elite consideration. And then they remember that Matt Rhule can't work from Scott Frost's standard. He has to work from his own. He has to set his own and create his own. Marcus Satterfield will run this offense in a different way than it was run a year ago. Different expectations, different standards, different plays, different verbiage, and different schemes. The same for Tony White in the defensive group. The same for Coach Foley and the special teams. Listen, it's chaos. And they're trying to find calm within that. But there's a straw in the drink that's stirring it. Because in this day and age, in college football, along with all collegiate sports, that if you are not satisfied with the talent that you have currently, the transfer portal allows you to go in and go shopping. It allows you've got a cart full of 85 players, and if you're not satisfied with the meal it's going to make, you can put some things back on the shelf and let other people buy them, and then you can go get the stuff you want if you have the money and the resources. And what we know about Nebraska is that it has the resources, it has the money. Does it have the want to dive back into the transfer portal and to try to improve this program immediately that way? We'll talk more about that, because there's the player side of the transfer portal, and then there's the coaches side of the transfer portal. We'll talk about those when we come back to Locked On. Hey, gang, thank you once again for making Locked On Huskers your first watch and listen each and every single day, whether it's on YouTube or however else you consume your podcast. We greatly appreciate it. I want to thank the folks for Locked On Sports for doing this. And then this is your first watch, and that qualifies you as an everydayer. I'm going to work out some really cool thing for the everydayers. We're going to do that for you folks that watch every day. But your second watch and listen should be Locked On College Ball, Locked On NFL Draft. And we're at that time where Huskers in the draft require special attention, because this is the best of the best. And here at Nebraska, when you're talking about Trey Palmer and Garrett Nelson, you're talking about O'Shawn Mathis, you're talking about Travis Vokalek, folks who are in it, but you're also talking about guys like Chancellor Brewington, who's working his tail off in this offseason. And I have to tell you, I've had some NFL folks ask about the young man. So that means that he's actually making an impact. And Nebraska has become a bit of a nice program when it comes to tight ends, because recent history shows that they've got tight ends who are getting looks and getting opportunities in the NFL. But you can check that out. Locked On NFL Draft. You can find it on YouTube or however else you consume your podcast. We're talking transfer portal because if Matt Rhule and the coaching staff, and this coaching staff, again, each group has its own need. It has its own shopping list. And the big thing is going to be, does each group feel comfortable with the talent that it has? And anytime you have returning players to that, new coaches have to make a decision. Is this somebody that has the talent that I want and need? Does this player have the skill set that I want and need? Because if you're a straight ahead blocker, being able to zone block is not the same thing, different skill set. If you're a downhill grinder, that would be different than you being a pass pro and a flex pass pro, so that you can protect a mobile runner? Do you want a mobile quarterback? Do you want a pass-first quarterback? Do you want a combo quarterback? What do you want? What do you need? What are you going to run? And I can tell you, Marcus Satterfield in his head has to figure out, one, am I working with what I have, or do I need something else? And we're at that point where we're going to see April 22nd what Satterfield believes in and what he's installed and what he's working with. But we're also going to see who's not in play. We're also going to see, can these players that currently exist do the things at the level that Marcus Satterfield and Matt Rhule need and want for this year's football team? We'll see from the running game. Can they pick up the blitzes? Do they know the verbals? Can they get to the audibles? Are we asking downhill runners to be exceptional pass receivers in the space? Are they good between the tackles? Are they able to stay healthy? Can they can they grind in cold weather in November? Because different runners from different places of the country, they process differently. Receivers, are they willing to block downfield? Can they make blocks in space? Can they put a 5'8", 180-pound receiver and ask him to crack down on a 240-pound linebacker from Wisconsin? Or is it more that I need that 5'8", 180-pound receiver to be matched up one-on-one against that 240-pound linebacker? And then can I take advantage of it? Are my runners willing to block? Are my tight ends going to stay healthy? Will they pick up the verbiage? Because you've got big tight ends now. It looks a little different in that you bring in somebody from Georgia who's been in big games and understands it. But can he do the things that are required for Marcus Satterfield's offense to work? And what quarterback makes that work? What makes that work best? What's required of the offensive line? Can they work together? If you've got 8 linemen in play, which group of 5 are going to work best together? And at what location on the line? You may start up at the right tackle. You may be the best. You may be the best left guard. There are going to be things that will be found out in this time. And then once you see them April 22nd, this coaching staff then has to reassess. It has to shut down and reset and say, from what we've seen in the practices up to date, and then what we see on April 22nd, do we have what we need to win in the Big Ten Conference this year? And that is never an easy question, especially new coaching staffs, new groups, new players. Now, the timetable, the calendar that's in play matters, because I can guarantee you, Husker fans, that after April 22nd, you're going to hear an additional group of names, and some of them are going to surprise you. Like, I would imagine a quarterback, I would imagine a running back, I would imagine a receiver, I would imagine a lineman, an offensive lineman, a defensive lineman. I would imagine a secondary member that recognizes, hey, playing time is not in the cards here, or they're going to ask me to be a special teams leader, and I don't necessarily want to do that. Yeah, some of the names are going to make your eyes pop. Some of them you could pretty much guess, but some you're going to go be surprised by. And here's the thing: the coaches need to get to their numbers so that they can actually regroup, reset, and then figure out, even at 85, do you have the 85 you want? Can you improve on any of the 85? And I guarantee you, in order to win in the Big Ten Conference, you've got to get better at the top end as well. Are your first 22 players good enough for you to win the Big Ten West? Are your top 44? Because depth is required in the Big Ten. We know that. Are your top 2 quarterbacks? Are you prepared for that? Who's your top guy? If you're satisfied, good. But not all players, not 6 or 7 quarterbacks are going to be satisfied with being 5 or 6 on the depth chart. So they may have options and they may move on. But from the coach's side, to ask simply, are we satisfied? And then for the players, once you get to spring game where all of these programs are putting players on display and giving them final auditions, that's a lot of programs. That's a lot of players that'll be back in on the shopping carts, on the shopping shelves come April 23rd and 24th. And that's for everywhere. Because there'll be players who jump in the transfer portal from Alabama, from Florida, from USC, from Oregon, from Texas A&M. And if you're in Nebraska and you're hunting, you're going to pay attention to that. And if you're a player currently on Nebraska who thinks he has Division I chops, but he's not going to get the proper look in the system or with the coaches that currently exist at Nebraska, then you need time and deserve time to get back in the transfer portal. And then the question for the player becomes this. Don't you as a player want to get in before spring game? Don't you want the opportunity to get in the ear of a coach before the flood of players approach that coach? Like, it's truly a thing. If you think you're a Division I Power 5 football player and you're not going to get the looks or reps that you want at the University of Nebraska, you think there's still 100 schools that want and need and could use you. Mm-hmm. And if you get in behind the curve and you get in behind the wave and the flood of players in the transfer portal, you're doing yourself a disservice and you're costing yourself money. So the when to get into the transfer portal and when to let players separate is a big part of the spring game. We'll put a pin there. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about some of these rooms, because some of these rooms are really crowded and really talented, and then some on the thin side. We'll talk about that when we come back to Locked On Huskers. Hey, gang, thank you again for making Locked On Huskers your first watch and listen each and every single day. And thank you to you everydayers. It means a lot. Your team every day. Huskers every day here on Locked On Huskers. You don't have to search around. We're easy to find. We're here giving you the work, and we greatly appreciate the numbers going up. If you have not subscribed, please do. Share and follow the content. Greatly appreciate it. As we talk about the transfer portal, we talk about spring game, there are rooms of note. And I just want to say it, that the quarterback room has 6 scholarship quarterbacks currently. Do you think when 4 of them have started Division I Power 5 football games, do you think they all stay? Somebody doesn't want to be number 4. If you're one of the 2 young gunslingers in Harburg and Torres, who everybody says has every bit of talent and every bit of skill required, are you willing to be anything less than 1 or 2? Are you? Because other staffs and other programs are looking for 6'4", 210-pound gunslingers. Like in the shopping list of college quarterbacks, that's pretty high. And then there are those 4 starters, those 4 guys. So Casey Thompson coming off an injury, Trevor Purdy coming off an injury, Logan Smothers coming off an injury, but all 3 of them covered the Huskers last year. Each of them got a start based on injury and need. Are any of them willing to step back? Are all of them competing in full? Do they all have a legitimate chance? Casey Thompson's been in a yellow jersey. Harburg and Torres have been working. Logan and Chuba they're recovering. And Jeff Sims is standing there, the golden child, the new kid on the block. He's the one that they brought in, the one that they chose and brought him in. Each of these rooms have interesting conversations and competitions. And each of those rooms will be changed either right before the spring game or right after. And then once we get that done, guess what, Husker fans? You'll have to do it again when the transfer portal opens in full. So this is just step one on the way. But this next one will tell us who the Huskers think they are currently. And they'll also tell us who they want to be going down the road. I would guarantee you that the roster is going to change several times before we get to Minneapolis at the end of August. That's a statement of truth. Thank you once again for making Locked On Huskers your first watch and listen each and every single day. Greatly appreciate your second should be Locked On NFL Draft. Jump on YouTube or however else you consume your podcast daily. Great details. Let's cover. We'll talk about Trey Palmer. We'll talk about Travis Vogelick. But Locked On NFL Draft, we'll talk about the projected 64. They'll give you all the details. And I know a lot of you fantasy folks need that information. Appreciate you. We'll close the show as we always do with the three words that mean so much. Go Big Red.